What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Yammie Noob, and today it's a living with the Aprilia RS660. We're going to take a look at this motorcycle less as a sport bike and more of a daily rider, because we already know it's a really good track bike. So let's see what it's like to ride it on the daily. Stay tuned, it's going to be a good one. So by now you guys should know the drill, know how this is going to work. I will be taking this motorcycle home with me for the next few days, riding it around as if I owned it and really giving you my idea and how it shakes down for me personally, so you guys can see another look at what this motorcycle's like on the daily ride. Now, if you would like to own this motorcycle, your time is running out to get entered to win. Click the links down below, go to ynmoto.co, yammynoobmerch.com, and use the code RS660 for 10% off your order and 2x entries to win. It's a great way to get yourself all those entries right as the buzzer goes, because by the time this video goes out, there's less than a week to get entered to win this here motorcycle. Now, with all that being said, let's get this bike out on my morning commute, see what it's like in downtown.
Alrighty, pulling onto the highway, getting ready to go home. We are taking a more direct route today to my place of residence because A, we already know that the RS660 is an excellent motorcycle for twisties, so I don't need to prove that anymore than we already have. And B, I'm not sure if you can tell by looking at what I'm riding into, there appears to be a massive, very powerful, aggressive storm. Take a look at those flags over there. And I don't like riding in the wet. So we're trying to get this over with as quickly as possible. Whoa! That was an aggressive gust of wind. I'm going to get behind some cars because that was not fun. And I do not feel like getting blown off the road today. Jesus Christ. I've never ridden in weather like this. That's brutal. Okay. So, what are we talking about with this motorcycle on the highway in, you know, hurricane spite over here? We are talking about the general day-to-day comfort of this motorcycle, because you know, when you're on a twisty road with a bike, you notice that you don't get as tired so much, your wrists don't hurt so much. Bikes are a lot easier to ride in twisties, especially sport bikes. Sport bikes get hard to ride when you're in, you know, you're in this position for a long period of time, sitting upright. It's just not very fun to do. But, as we know, the Aprilia RS660 here has a more comfortable, more amenable riding position. Does that equate to easier going when you're going to and from the office, like I am right now? The answer is yeah, it makes it really comfortable. I've said before that this bike sits and feels a lot like my VFR. To be honest, it feels more like my VFR after I did the handlebar risers. The handlebars are actually significantly taller than you might think by looking at it. It's a very comfortable place to sit, and the seat itself is also very comfortable. Now, does that mean that I would like to be on this motorcycle for hours on end in stop and go traffic like this? No, absolutely not. You will start to get tired of this riding position. You're not going to be spending all day cruising in a straight line on this bike unless you're, you know, a masochist. It's really hard to ride sport bikes all day, especially for me. I get annoyed. My hands start cramping up. I tend to hold on a little bit tighter to the bars than I probably should. So maybe I need a rider modification there, but I don't know, it feels a little tiresome after a while. And here comes the rain. I'm not sure if y'all can see, but the wind is buffeting me so severely on this highway that I can't actually keep the bars straight, so we're not going to be quote-unquote pushing here. Wow, okay. This is the dangerous part, getting down onto the highway. Whoa, okay. We're going to slow it. We're going to slow it nice and down, because this is not good right here. Yeah, no, I do not feel comfortable on this motorcycle on this overpass. Get me on the highway, please. Ugh. Okay, all right. Danger zone passed. Back to commuting. So, the commuting position is actually really comfortable. One of the cool things that this motorcycle has, which we are not going to experiment with because we are in the throes of this horrific rainstorm, is it has cruise control. Now, cruise control on a motorcycle always feels a little bit funny to me. And I find it works best when you're in 6th gear or 5th gear, where when you can roll off on the cruise control, the engine braking isn't so sudden as to instantly tow you down to a stop. I noticed this a lot on the Rebel, where the engine braking is very significant, but the Rebel has this real jerky on cruise control, off cruise control engine grab, and that I think is just inherently going to affect motorcycles generally because of how they make their power. I really wish that I could goof around with it now, but I promise, before the end of this video, I will be able to comment on the cruise control. Now, one thing that we're not experiencing right now, because it is currently 74 degrees and raining, is the heat. This motorcycle gets nice and toasty as you're commuting on it. It's a hot motorcycle. There's no getting away from that on this bike. So, you do need to bear that in mind if you live in a hot climate, although generally nowadays motorcycles are hot, so, you know, I'd say it's no more or less hot than any other parallel twin motorcycle I've ridden. It's certainly not as hot as a Panigale, that's for sure. Panigale is way hotter. Oh, good grief, with this rain. This is not okay. Seriously, it was sunny when I got to the office this morning, and we filmed the comprehensive review, which is coming out in a few days, and now I'm literally riding through a fucking hurricane. This is not fun. Well guys, with that being said, I think I am going to pass this off to the next segment, which I think is going to be me going over my favorite and least favorite things on this motorcycle. Let's take it back into the shop and dry off. Well, what we have done here is we have tested the RS660's application as a deep sea exploring vehicle, and as a submersible, I can say that the RX660 has some flaws. It's a little cold. I'm definitely not dry, and I really want to go home.
Before we get back in the garage, I need to take a minute and shout out our sponsor for today's video, Manscaped. You already know that they make the best ball shaver out there, the Lawnmower 4.0. It's got a longer battery life, wireless charging, and trimmer guards, just in case you don't want to cut all the way down to the woodwork. But don't forget that they offer a whole line of trimming and grooming products. They've got the Weed Whacker for all those unsightly nose hairs you've got sticking out of your proboscis, the Shears 2.0 for trimming and cleaning your fingernails, and a whole line of ball toners and tonics to keep you smelling as fresh as you look. Click the link down below and check out all the stuff Manscaped has to make your junk feel as good as this RS660, and you'll get an automatic 20% off your order just by clicking that link. No codes or anything. Thanks again to Manscaped for supporting this video. Alright, so bringing the bike back into the shop here for the first time, I wanted to take a look at some of my favorite, least favorite things on this motorcycle. And obviously, and most importantly, my favorite thing here is the engine. This engine is so good. It is just straight up mwah, chef's kiss. It's so much fun to play with. to making the perfect amount of power, and guys, the sound is so good. This aero system is just, it's so juicy, and it's the perfect amount of noise. It doesn't drone when you're on the highway, and it's just so much, the sound is basically perfect. It's exactly what you want. And to make things better, Motivation has given us a rapid bike. We unfortunately don't have time to install it, but we are going to be shipping it to the winner, so they will be able to tune this motorcycle to their liking with an automatic tuner, which is just great. So thanks to the guys over at Motivation for helping us out with that. So one of my least favorite things on this motorcycle, and it's a bit of a bummer, is how unintuitive this menu system is to use on this motorcycle. I just haven't screwed with the settings because I don't want to. It's a pain in the butt. You can switch between different rider modes on the fly. Those are the preset ones from the factory, and they're pretty good, but I'd like to get in and tweak it myself so that I can ride with my own settings, but it's just not worth the effort, honestly, at this point for me, for not having it for super long. If it was my bike, I would definitely put in the effort to make these little adjustments so that it could set it up exactly the way that I want to. And another little thing that bothers me, and a lot of Italian motorcycles do this, is the high beam switch is right here. It's really easy to accidentally hit that with your gloved hand, not feel it, and ride with your high beams on for no reason. So kind of wish that the high beam was just like flash to pass here, and the high beam switch was somewhere else on the cluster, but that's just me. So guys, this package is really good, and at this point I'm starting to grasp at negative things, but two positives I wanted to cover really quickly before we finish this out is, first of all, the looks. I have grown to really enjoy the looks of this motorcycle. When I'm riding around on it, I feel like $1,000,000, and I mean, I've taken to lovingly call it the Starship Banana because it's got so much technology, and it looks like a giant banana when it's rolling down the street. It feels very cool to ride, despite being a little bit flashy and a little bit silly. The next thing I wanted to talk about, something that I actually really like about this motorcycle, is the ergonomics package here. It's a little tight for a guy my size. I'm barely able to fit inside this tank cutout, but I do fit. And so even when I want to get my feet up in a nice aggressive stance, I fit perfectly fine on here. When I want to relax, I also fit perfectly fine. I'm really happy with the way that this bike is set up, even if you can't really adjust the ergonomics at all. Can't put a riser on here without messing with the triple tree. Can't really mess around with seat height or anything like that on sport touring motorcycles. I'm still very pleased with this setup. The only problem with that is that the mirrors, they're horrible. Not only are they in the wrong spot, I can't see past myself, but they wibble and wobble really crazy because these parallel twins, they are still a little bit vibrational, and those mirrors shake around quite a bit. Rounding out the things that I don't like about this motorcycle, it has a little bit too much character. This motorcycle has a squeaky rear brake, which we are going to get sorted before it gets shipped out. And the check engine light kind of comes and goes. It still rides fine, it still brakes fine, it just makes noises and the check engine light comes on. That's kind of Italian bike life, but it's not the life that I would choose. I kind of just want the bike to, you know, not have any flaws with it. And you know what? Maybe that's just because this is one of the first bikes out on the market. And chances are, if you're going to get one of these motorcycles, at this point, if you haven't already gotten one, you're going to be getting one of the newer runs where they have a lot more of these problems sorted out already. So you can feel totally confident buying one of these after this model year, once you start getting into the 2022s, the second, third, fourth, fifth runs of these motorcycles. They're going to be a lot more normal. They're not going to have these weird gremlins that this motorcycle has. Now remember, we are going to get all of these gremlins sorted out before it gets shipped off to the winner, and we're probably going to get this motorcycle serviced because it's creeping up on that 600-mile mark. But why don't we say we add a few more miles to it by taking it out on a long ride and seeing how the ergonomics package that I liked earlier stacks up after about 2 hours in the saddle.
Alrighty everybody, here we are about 50-ish miles from downtown where I began this cruise, and it's been about an hour and a half since I left. I hit some traffic getting out of town, as is often the case, and I am reporting in my status after, you know, a while in the saddle, and I can tell you that it is I'm feeling very similar on the RS as I did on my VFR. So the RS is amenable for a while. After a while, the riding position does start to catch up to you. You feel really fresh when you get into it, and then if you spend any good long time on the highway, it really starts to add up on you. The miles really start adding up. I would say after about 45 miles on the highway, I pulled into a gas station, topped the bike off even though I didn't really need to, and stretched my legs. It's not bad. I could definitely have gone farther, but you know, it didn't feel comfortable per se. Now, that's not meaning that this motorcycle can't be something you spend all day in the saddle on. I think you should take frequent breaks when you're riding it around. Definitely needs it on this bike. You can tell it was really meant to be on a twisty road, because when you're riding this thing around in the twisties and you're moving your weight around, it's a lot easier to stay comfortable. You can move your weight around on the pegs, you can kind of get up out of the pegs, you can move around a little bit. While you're doing that, your weight isn't settling down and the wind isn't feeling so, you know, oppressive to you. It's just a lot easier to ride this motorcycle on a twisty road than on a highway. So for those of you who are out there, you know, wondering whether or not the RS660 makes for a good touring motorcycle, it does not. But if your twisty road is, you know, 40 or 50 miles from where you're going, you can still get there and feel pretty fresh, assuming you are okay with perhaps stopping and taking a little break halfway through, or you know, maybe you're a little bit more used to it, because that is something with a seating position like this. On a Super Sport, you don't really get used to that seating position. You're really not meant to anyway. On a bike like this, you can get used to and start to work around this seating position. I remember on my VFR, when I first started riding it, I was like, it's a little uncomfortable. And then after I put down a few thousand miles, I was like, oh, this is normal. This is what it's meant to be like. And it was really easy to get along with. So I'd imagine this motorcycle is about the same. Now, lately, I've been having problems with the seats in the living with motorcycles that I've been living with, and this one, no problems whatsoever. It's really comfy. I could ride on this seat all day. I kind of wish my SMCR had a seat this comfortable. It's nice and wide, but it's still narrow where you want it to be. So it's a very comfortable motorcycle on a twisty road. On a highway, a little less so. But, I mean, it's a sport bike, right? It's meant to be on a twisty road. What it really makes me wonder is what the Turbo 660 is going to feel like. I feel like, for me personally, given my predilection for naked motorcycles and upright torque monsters, I feel like the Turbo 660 might feel a little bit more comfortable to me. However, the Turbo, the big boy Turbo, the 1100, is basically an RSV4 with a handlebar. So, assuming that Aprilia did the same thing, where they just turned this into a, you know, Turbo with a handlebar, you know, they just put it on there and were like, all right, job done. You know, chances are it's going to feel still pretty aggressive, but I have a feeling that even a couple of, maybe even like an inch, 3/4 of an inch rise and a 1/2 inch pullback on the bars would really make this motorcycle a lot more comfortable. Now, while we were out here on this kind of bumpy back road, it is worth pointing out that this suspension is not completely adjustable. You have rebound and you have preload, but you do not have compression. And Yammie had this bike set up for his weight when he did his track day, so it is currently feeling a little bit undersprung for my weight. I have a feeling that if I sat down, I could get it pretty close, but I also feel like because I'm bigger than the average Italian rider, you're probably, if you're, you know, north of 220 like I am, you're gonna want a different spring for the shock, and maybe you need a new set of springs up front. But, you know, it's not so bad that I notice it, really. You know, the last sport bike I rode was the CBR 1000 RR SP Fireblade, and that had the most unbelievable front end feel of any motorcycle. This one feels fine, you know, compared to that. I could stand for it to be a little less spongy, but, you know, I appreciate it when I'm going over some bumps in this aggressive-ish riding position to not have the suspension shaking my spine. Now, I'm going to keep putting down some miles on this motorcycle if I have to, because I'm out in the middle of nowhere. But why don't we take this motorcycle back into the shop and answer some Discord questions about the bike.
All right, folks, bringing the bike back into the shop here, I wanted to answer some Discord questions. Much like the Trident 660, this bike is brand new, and unfortunately, it's got a lot of questions added recently due to some recall issues that this bike, again, is not suffering from. This motorcycle is fine, but there are a ton of questions about this bike. So I polled the Discord boys, and I've selected the best questions here to answer. And we're just going to try and get it through as many of them as I can here in about 5 or 6 minutes. Let's get this done quickly. All right, so first question here from Kialna. Why is it worth the extra money over bikes in the 650 class, knowing that the 660 is a class of its own, but what makes it good enough to be worth it? Everything, really, honestly. If you are bored with the basic 650 motorcycles, you don't want yourself that same old parallel twin, you like the MT-07, but you want a little bit more punch, you want something that's a little bit more sophisticated, this motorcycle really is more positioned along like the Duke 790 situation, where it's built a little bit more premium, it commands a more premium price tag, and the fit and finish really earns it. So this motorcycle is definitely a step above those 650s out there. It's one you can really be proud to own too. This is a very cool motorcycle. Next up, we've got Clockwork Dork. Why would you or would you not buy this bike over other bikes in its class? Honestly, what class is it? Is it more of a 650 and less of a 600? Well, it's neither, honestly. It is literally smack in between. And there really isn't any other motorcycle in this class, honestly. It feels like it's defining a new genre of motorcycles. So if you're at all interested in this relaxed sport bike that still has a ton of power, a great top end feel, I mean, this motorcycle is one of a kind. It's very cool, and I hope we see a lot more like this. I honestly don't know if the R7 is going to be an adequate competitor to this motorcycle. It feels like it's just another 650, honestly. So we'll have to see, but right now, this one of a kind. Next up, Squid Ceviche. If you could change the yellow color, would you do it? You know, I honestly think that like a black and white look would be really cool. I think an all white look would also be really cool. I'm a sucker for the Ducati Super Sport in that pearl white with the whatever they have in the color that gives it almost that slightly yellowish tinge, that pearl to it. I love that look on sport bikes, and I feel like a black and white scheme on this would be really cool with some red lettering. Don't get me wrong, I like the ketchup and mustard look. It has grown on me a lot, and it feels like $1 million when you're riding around a bright yellow banana boat, but this thing is, I would love to see it in white and black with red lettering. I think that would look really cool. So we got a lot of questions about the menus, and I talked about this a little bit earlier on, but selecting one, Philip 290, how difficult is it to change all the settings? What settings are the most useful, and what are all the adjustable settings? So we've got a whole segment about this in our review that is going to be coming up in the next couple of days, but top-end discussion about the technology. Yes, it is a pain in the butt to find all the menus, and it is a pain in the butt to adjust everything. Some of the things that are the most useful to adjust, engine braking, your ABS, because I've noticed that the rear ABS comes on a little bit quick, and probably to a lesser extent your traction control. I've left some stoplights a little bit quick because I just like the way that this bike produces low down torque, and I've seen the traction control light come on, so maybe a little less intrusive traction control. Those are the ones that I would set in there, but you know, you really got to sit down and dedicate some time to doing it because it's infuriating going through these menus. Augie, how manageable is the maintenance on it? How accessible are replacement parts? Well, we haven't really done any maintenance to this motorcycle, but I can speak to taking the fairings off because I've had to do it twice now. The fairings are a pain in the butt to remove. You might think that there's not a lot here, but honestly, there's so many little push pins and bolts and screws. It's a pain in the butt to take this thing apart. However, it is just a parallel twin. So parallel twins are really easy to work on once you get the fairings off of the thing. Honestly, if it were between this bike and something like the Tuono 660, I'd probably get the Tuono because it has a little less plastic on it, but there's still a lot on there too. So you are signing up for a little bit of that sport bike life with this, so give and take. Easy to maintain, hard to get to the parts that you need to maintain. Matthew, is it overpriced compared to buying a used 600? Should you just wait to get a used one of these? This and a 600 have very little in common, to be honest. This is a very good street bike. It's super easy to ride, it's easy to live with, and it makes power exactly where you'd want it to. Super sports, they're really designed only for track riding. You know, they only want one thing and it's disgusting. But you know, if that's the kind of riding that you're interested in, you probably want the 600. If you're interested in riding it on track and on street in equal measure, this is your motorcycle. This is a good one right here. Ninjas, please. Spite, if you had purchased the RS660 instead of your VFR, would you still own the bike? If not, why would you have traded it in for something else? I think that if I had bought this instead of my VFR, it would have been very hard for me to get rid of this for my SMCR. This is a very good motorcycle. I adore the sound that it makes. And compared to the VFR, it's so much lighter, it's so much easier to ride. It doesn't have 4 pistons, so you don't have to worry about doing valves on, you know, the back of an engine that's buried underneath all of this stuff. It's just right here. So I think I would have had to have a good long think and meditate on getting rid of this motorcycle. However, it is still a sport bike, and my tendencies, my predilections lie a little bit more towards upright, naked torque monsters. So I still probably would have gotten rid of it for that because it still revs out like a sport bike. There is a noticeable kink in the power band. But to answer your question, it would have been very hard for me to get rid of this motorcycle. Here's another good one. iMag 187. I'm typically more of a cruiser rider. Coming from that background yourself, what is the hardest thing to get used to daily driving a more standard street bike like this? Well, first of all, it's not super standard. It is closer to a sport bike than a standard. But the biggest thing that you're gonna notice is how you hold your weight on the motorcycle. Despite this having high riser clip-on situation here, you still end up, if you're not paying attention, putting your weight on your wrists and sitting like this on the motorcycle. You don't want to do that. So you need to focus on getting your feet up on the pegs and putting your weight on your feet and not on your hands. Because normally on a cruiser, you put all your weight on your butt. It's a very different riding style, but it's also a lot of fun. I have enjoyed my time with this, despite me liking more laid back, easy to sit on motorcycles. Our last question today comes from Bradley Hall. Is there enough room to put a new triple clamp on the bike with clip-ons that push the bars more forward? I'm 6'4" and I'm wondering how much more I can lean over. Also, when you ride, is your butt pushed up against the seat or is it your nuts on the tank? Well, as far as moving the bars, I honestly wouldn't screw with the bars. I'm 6'4" in my riding boots, and this is a very comfortable place for me to sit. I don't feel like I need to lean over super far, especially on the street. it's perfectly comfortable as a street rider the way it's set up. Now, as for where you sit on this motorcycle, I move around a lot. If I'm wanting to just cruise, I'll put my feet up on the pegs like a cruiser boy, and I'll sit forward on the seat and I'll, lean back. But if I'm getting after it, it's feet up, butt back here, hands on the handlebars, exactly like you would on a normal sport bike. So you have the ability to move around because it is kind of a dual purpose motorcycle, street and sport at the same time. So very amenable motorcycle, I would say, especially for a taller guy like me. I will say I am pushing the limit on this tank wing right here. So if you're more legs than I am, that is something to consider because you cannot modify this. But with that being said, why don't we get this motorcycle back out on the road, and I'm gonna start wrapping up my thoughts on it.
Alrighty, everybody, if you are at all familiar with living withs and you get this far in, you know that I like to take these bikes out in their natural habitat, the place that I think they are the best at. And failing getting this thing on a racetrack, which I think is probably its favorite place to be, I have come to the next best thing, my favorite weekend haunt destination way here in Austin. I have come to the conclusion that the RS660 is the ultimate weekend weapon. This thing is so much fun to ride. It's an absolute laugh riot. It sounds great. It feels great. It's so easy to ride on a twisty road. And I mean, it's fun, man. It really does just put a smile on my face whenever I wind it out. Now, I don't think that this motorcycle is perfect. If it were my money, I would not be buying this bike. I think that the main thing holding it back for me is the ergonomics and the plastics. Don't get me wrong, the ergos are fine. I've mentioned it in the past and we did my long ride segment, but I've gone on a couple of long rides on this motorcycle, and it does start to bug me after a while. And I like to be able to ride my motorcycle as long as I want, and really have the limiting factor be my desire to ride versus my body being like, no, we're gonna need to take a break here. I'm really interested in riding a Tuono 660 because I think that's going to solve a lot of the problems. I feel like the pegs are going to be in a very similar place. I feel like the handling is going to be very similar, but I think the handlebars are going to make a huge difference in terms of comfort on this motorcycle for me. And who knows, maybe it'll be a little bit more roomy with that handlebar on there. It'll certainly make it easier to adjust for folks of different height. But, like I was saying, this motorcycle is so much fun, guys. It is so much fun to ride. I've basically not gotten on this motorcycle and not enjoyed myself. I don't think it's been the bike to cure me of my general apathy towards sport motorcycles. I'm not a big fan of sport bikes directly, but I can kind of make an exception for this one, insofar as I had the ability and places to store a second $11,000 motorcycle. Now, who do I think that this motorcycle is designed for? It is designed for somebody who's on their second or third bike, wants something new, but realizes that 100 horsepower is all that you need for daily riding, spirited weekend riding, and even track riding. This motorcycle has so much to teach you, and it has such a great character and playful quality that as a second bike, it's like, wow, dude, nice choice. As a third bike, you're like, okay, you have sophisticated taste. However, I see this motorcycle being bought mostly by people who want to step down. They're like, I don't need my super crazy, 600, 750, 1000 cc sport bike. I just need something fun and fairly comfortable. you know. Probably the owner of the RS660 is a little bit older. Not perhaps as interested in all-out performance, but wants something that they can do kind of everything with when it comes to riding on the road anyway. It's a very good package on this motorcycle, and you know, despite some of the weirdness about the engine recall situation, and a okay quick shifter. I think the quick shift up is a little bit shaky, a little herky-jerky, but the quick shift down, oh boy, it is so good. Just take a quick listen to this. How do you not love that, man? Up, I find myself clutching a little bit more. Just because it's a little bit smoother to clutch this motorcycle than use the quick shifter. It's just a personal taste thing. Aside from that, I mean, I can't really find fault with this motorcycle. Yeah, the mirrors suck. Yeah, I wish it was a little bit more comfortable. But you know what? If you're getting one of these motorcycles, you're not looking in your mirrors, and you don't really care about comfort. You find it a nice addition. So with all that being said, it is time for me to give the RS660 the ultimate in silly ratings. And I've been thinking about this one a lot. And seeing as how we have considered this motorcycle a spicy meatball, this motorcycle should be rated as a spicy meatball. And it is 17 spicy meatballs in your spaghetti and meatballs. That is a lot of meatballs. I've said meatballs a lot, and it is starting to lose all meaning. But anyway, it's a really good motorcycle, guys. I have thoroughly enjoyed my time riding around on the RS, and I'm definitely going to be bummed when we don't have it around. It's really been an enjoyable, fun bike. I don't really have anything more to add aside from, I mean, it's just so good. It's so good. I really like this bike, guys. Now remember, guys, the time to get entered to win this motorcycle, if you would like to win it, and why wouldn't you? It is so good. Get yourself entered to win the Banana Starship down below by clicking the links. Go to ynmoto.co, yammynoobmerch.com, and using the code RS660 to get yourself 10% off and 2x entries to win this bike right here. Make me sad. Win this motorcycle, guys. It is so good. So good. Now, with the road coming to an end, I think I'm going to wrap this video up. I will catch you guys in the next one. See you later. Oh, man, guys, this is not fun. This is really not fun. Oh, I can feel water running down the front of my chest and into my groin. This is not fun. Oh, now I'm stuck in a red light. Oh, I'm so cold. Oh, it's so cold. Ugh. Oh, I can feel it in my gloves, too. Oh, this sucks. Well, not every day can be perfectly nice and sunny. Every now and again, you experience this. Oh, man, there's standing water, huh? Okay. Well, you just ride careful. Nuh-uh. I am not stopping out there. Fuck that noise. This is really fun. This is really fun.
Ah, bummer for you, my little squid. This video is actually over. But lucky for you, there's plenty of other Yammie videos you can check out right over here. What's going to happen to them? I don't know. I haven't seen them. But you can watch them right now.